So the United States government has been doing regime change around the world, pretty much however they see fit. And of course, Russia practices some of that as well. And of course, much of NATO countries stand behind the United States when they believe it's time for regime change in smaller countries around the world. For better or for worse, this is done. And the latest is Venezuela. Now, before I even get started on this, before you start asking the question, why are you talking about the United States and regime change around the world? I thought you talked about Israel and its salvation. That's exactly where I'm getting to. So I'm going to go in the first probably, I don't know, 10 minutes going into the details of the Venezuelan situation. And then I'm going to talk about how it relates to the Kingdom of Israel. Let me go ahead and go to screen share, and we're going to get started here. All right. This is on Vox. Now, I know Vox is a left-wing publication. Now, I want everybody to remember and to understand that Hugo Chavez, when he was president of Venezuela, he cursed Israel. He cursed Israel in front of TV cameras, I believe it was 3 times, and then just months later, he died of cancer. Bear that in mind as I go talk through this article here, okay? Why thousands of protesters and Trump are demanding Venezuela's president step down. A once unknown politician is now leading a massive anti-Maduro movement. A longtime dictator, international pariah, maintains he won a widely disputed election to stay in power. A fresh-faced, low-profile opposition leader calls him a usurper and has incited large-scale protests to hasten his ouster. And the United States, knowing the growing tensions could lead to greater violence, stokes the roaring fire from afar. That's the situation in Venezuela, where thousands of demonstrators plan to fill the streets on Wednesday in an effort to depose President Nicolas Maduro, the socialist leader who has overseen the most devastating economic collapse in the world. The rally is mostly in support of Juan Guaido, the leader of the country's opposition-controlled legislative body, who asked anti-government Venezuelans to demonstrate against Maduro. Guaido, along with Trump administration and a number of other international observers, asserts that Maduro isn't the right president of the South American nation. They argue that last May's presidential election was rigged so that the dictator would win a second 6-year term, citing Venezuela's constitution. This is where this thing gets a little funny. Guaido and others say the sham vote means that he, as the head of the National Assembly, the country's legislative body, is the rightful, albeit temporary, leader of the country since there's no legitimate president. Guaido wants the military to back him and has called for the people to protest on the 61st anniversary of when a military dictatorship fell in Venezuela, no less, to compel Maduro's resignation. Now, when you look at the headlines today, you see that all the European countries have basically sent Maduro, dictator of Venezuela, an ultimatum that either he holds elections within 8 days, or they all are going to recognize the opposition as the temporary president of Venezuela. Now, before I get into the constitutionality of what the opposition leader is trying to do here, what I want to remind everyone is this, that when you have all your eggs in one basket, or when you have, how do I put this? Yes, all your eggs in one basket, and you drop the basket and all the eggs are broken, you don't have another basket of eggs, do you? Well, this is what's happened to Venezuela. The previous president, he turned Venezuela into a socialist utopia when oil prices were at all-time highs. The people lived in a luxurious lifestyle. People who had no jobs, they were able to afford houses on the government dole, get food on the table. It was the wealthiest country in all of South America. Then, of course, when oil prices fell, and the oil prices fell because of the natural market, the natural market flow, as the United States began developing newer methods of extracting oil, and just beat everyone, including Russia, Saudi Arabia, everyone in the oil market, and this caused a massive drop in oil prices. And when a country, when a nation does not diversify its GDP portfolio, that's what happened to Venezuela is exactly what happens. But part of what happened to Venezuela is their former president cursing Israel 3 times. Now, there is a dispute going on as to whether the publications in the United States and in Europe are accurate concerning the Venezuelans having to eat zoo animals. You can go and you can check out, I don't know, I might have accidentally deleted this. Yeah, I did. But this gal, Sonia Moda, I had accidentally deleted one of her oh, here we go. She's pointing out here, this is a grocery store, that there's vegetables stocked in the grocery store. And she has this video about inside Venezuela's markets, propaganda versus reality. Okay. Now, of course, those who support Maduro, you notice that they are anti-Israel. It's very interesting. But what I'm saying here is, it appears that things are not exactly as, and of course this is back in 2017, by the way, but that was in the heart of 2017 was really when things were supposedly extremely bad in Venezuela. And so we are only seeing one side of the story here, but the fact remains is that the Maduro government is just like the Chavez government, Israel haters. So they shouldn't expect anything less voting for an Israel hater. But what I want to talk about is the opposition leader, he quotes the Constitution of Venezuela. Oh, let me scroll down. Let's see if I can find it now. So Maduro usurped power. Now he faces a major backlash. In October 2016, the country's Supreme Court, which Maduro stacked with his cronies, removed the National Assembly's authority of having a say over the economy. Well, I will tell you, folks, all around the world, these so-called democracies, all the time you have one branch of government usurping authority over other branches of government. And it just happens in the United States as well. And so this is nothing new here. Point number two, then in March 2017, the judicial branch straight up dissolved the National Assembly altogether. Now, I have not thoroughly read the Constitution of Venezuela, so I don't know if they have the authority to do this or not. I really don't know. But I do know about Article 233, in which the opposition leader quotes, but I'll get to that in just a minute. After an international outcry, the court reversed its decision, but still greatly reduced lawmakers' powers. Well, that's something that the judiciary branch in most countries do. In fact, they even do it in Israel. And Israel has no constitution. And then the Israeli Court of Justice, the Israeli Supreme Court, they declare laws constitutional or unconstitutional when they don't have a constitution. Now, this is not a knock against Israel. I'm just pointing out the form of government that's around the world is a, as you might call it, a democratically elected Republican form of government, which was founded in Rome, a Roman type of government, obviously fraught with peril. Point number three, and just a few months later, in July 2017, Maduro moved to replace the National Assembly. His government held an election to create a new body that would have the authority to rewrite the country's laws and constitution. Well, in order to do that, you'd have to change the constitution, wouldn't you? You'd think. But once again, I'm not familiar with the Constitution of Venezuela. So the dictator's allies won all 545 seats. So what appears to have happened, yes, is usurpation. Okay. Venezuelans didn't just sit back and let this happen without voicing their displeasure, though. They protested furiously in Caracas and throughout the country for years, clashing with Maduro's security forces and skirmishes that led to hundreds of deaths. Okay. Let's scroll down here. We have Guaido, the unlikely resistance leader. Guaido's ascent is quite surprising, according to Ronald Rodriguez, the Venezuela expert in Colombia. Guaido is not the most popular figure among the opposition. Rodriguez even said he is as third-rate and uncharismatic. But pictures of him speaking to large crowds have made the industrial engineer seem like his country's Barack Obama, Rodriguez explained, although he clearly lacks the former president's political skill. But what made him so central to this current drama is that he claims that he is the rightful president to his country. And as you can see right here, Guaido cites Article 233 of Venezuela's Constitution, which basically says, folks, so I'm going to go to Article 233. And I don't see it. I do not see this claim here holding up. That if the president fails at his or her duties, or if there is an absence of leadership, the National Assembly's chief will take temporary charge of the nation. Okay, let's go there. Constitution of Venezuela, Article 233. Let's look at what it says. The President of the Republic. Notice I said a Republican form of government democratically elected, shall become permanently unavailable to serve by reason of any of the following events. So this is how Article 233 describes what is written. In other words, how do I put this? They're quoting Article 223 of Venezuela's Constitution. They say, it basically says, as if president fails at his or her duties, or if there's an absence of leadership. Okay? The president of the republic shall become permanently unavailable to serve by reason of any of the following events. So this is right here, resignation. So if he resigns, Article 223 says he is permanently unavailable. That's number one. Number two, removal from office by decision of the Supreme Tribunal of Justice. In other words, their Supreme Court. Number three, permanent physical or mental disability certified by a medical board, designated by the Supreme Tribunal of Justice. Once again. So twice, the Supreme Tribunal of Justice or the Supreme Court can remove the president from office in two different ways. With the approval, now the latter, certified by a medical board, it has to have the approval of the National Assembly. So in other words, the national abandonment of his position duly declared by the National Assembly and recall by popular vote. So the only thing that comes close to the National Assembly having any power to get rid of the president is abandonment of his position duly declared by the National Assembly. In other words, if the National Assembly duly declares that he abandons his position, have they done that? You have all these world leaders. You have the United States taking the lead in this, declaring that they have 8 days to hold a new election, or they're going to automatically recognize Guaido as the president because he's the National Assembly's chief. So right here it says, Guaido cites Article 233 of Venezuela's Constitution, which basically says, when you see this word basically, you know something is up, because it doesn't basically say anything. And when you read this particular article in the Venezuela's Constitution, there is nothing vague about it. The National Assembly's chief will take temporary charge of the nation. Now, is there an absence in his leadership? Obviously not. Now it says they're saying if the president fails at his or her duties. We just read here in what way this man can be removed from office. And so far as I have seen, see, if they want to declare him mentally disabled, they have to have a certified medical board designated by the Supreme Tribunal of Justice. But the Tribunal of Justice is stacked with his cronies. They're not going to do that. Is he dead? No. Has he resigned? No. Has he been removed from office by the decision of Supreme Tribunal of Justice? No. Has he been declared physically disabled, mentally disabled, or certified by a medical board designated by the Supreme Tribunal of Justice with the approval of the National Assembly? No. Has he abandoned his position? No. Therefore, they cannot duly declare that he did. The National Assembly cannot duly declare that he did. The only thing that can happen is a recall by popular vote. That's the only thing they can do. But you see, folks, you see what's going on here? Now, the nations around the world need to be careful because they themselves can find themselves in the same situation. What do I mean? Well, you see, folks, when the kingdom of David reasserts itself in Israel and basically deposes, or how do I say this? Not depose. What is the word that I want to use? Removes the power of the prime minister of Israel, removes the power of the president of Israel, removes the power of the Knesset of Israel, and removes the power of the Supreme Court of Israel, which is what the kingdom of David will do. What do you think these nations that are trying to get rid of Maduro, what do you think they're going to say about that? How dare you? You have to uphold democracy. You have to have free elections. The kingdom of Israel is not going to be a democracy. The kingdom of Israel is not going to be a republican form of government. Those are all Romanish ideals. The kingdom of David is going to be an absolute dictatorship. You heard me correctly. And let me read to you an example. King David. And it shall come to 2 Samuel 8 and verse 1. And after this, it came to pass that David smote the Philistines and subdued them. And David took Methegama out of the hand of the Philistines. Now, Methegama was at that time the largest city of the Philistines. He smote Moab. Now, listen to this, folks. Listen to this. He smote Moab and measured them with a line, forcing them all down on the ground in 3 lines. And 2 of the lines that he measured, he put them to death. And with 1 full line to keep alive, and so the Moabites became David's servants and brought gifts. I'll tell you something else that David did that NATO, Russia would never approve of. David also smote Hadadezer, the son of Rehob, king of Zobah, and he went to do what? To recover his border at the river Euphrates. And David took from him 1,000 chariots and 700 horsemen and 20,000 footmen. And David hoed all the chariot horses, but reserved of them for 100 chariots. And when the Syrians of Damascus came to, I guess, get Hadadezer, king of Zobah, to help them, David slew of the Syrians 22,000 men. Then David put garrisons in Syria of Damascus, and the Syrians became servants to David and brought gifts. And Jehovah, he approved. He preserved David wherever he went. And David took the shields of gold that were on the servants of Hadadezer and brought them to Jerusalem. And from Betah and from Berothai, cities of Hadadezer, King David took exceeding much brass. Verse 13, and David got him a name when he returned from smiting of the Syrians in the valley of Salt, being 18,000 men, and he put garrisons in Edom. And throughout all Edom he put garrisons, and all they of Edom became David's servants. And Jehovah preserved David wherever he went, which brings me to, we want to talk about Syria, we want to talk about Edom. Let's see. We'll go to Zechariah 9 first. We will see that the war where Zion's coming king will show up is going to be at the time when Idlib province in Syria is going to be under the gun. Yes, Hadrach, that's where is located in the Idlib province in Syria that's under the gun right now. The burden of the word of Jehovah in the land of Hadrach and Damascus will rest on them. And it is also when the eyes of all mankind, including all the tribes of Israel, are going to see Jehovah face to face in person. Now today, folks, Hama is under the gun. And Tyre and Zidon, which is Lebanon, will also be under the gun, under Israel's gun very soon. In fact, they're talking about it right now. Hassan Nasrallah, head of Hezbollah, who's now running Lebanon, wants to pick a fight with Israel, and they're going to get what they wish for. And we see while all this is happening, this is when Zion's king returns. And Jehovah is going to save his people because a son of David is going to do exploits like his father David did. Edom. Edom. We saw what David did to Edom. Isaiah 34. Judgment on the Gentiles. Verse 1. Come near, you Gentiles, to hear, and hearken, you people. Let the earth hear and all that are in the world and all the things that come forth of it. For the indignation of Jehovah is upon all Goyim, all the Gentiles, and his fury upon all their armies. He has utterly destroyed them. He has delivered them to the slaughter. Their slain also shall be cast out, and their stink shall come up out of their carcasses. The mountains shall be melted with their blood. And all the host of heaven shall be dissolved. You can read this in the book of Revelation too. Peter talks about this in 2 Peter. I believe it's in 2 Peter 3, in fact. And the heavens will be rolled together as a scroll. Let's go there. May have to do a little yes. 2 Peter 3 verse 10. And also Revelation 6, verse 14. So you folks, your preachers that tell you that the the prophets have been fulfilled, that there's no need for their words anymore. These are direct quotes from the prophet Isaiah. Revelation 6, verse 14. The sixth seal, verse 12. And I beheld, and when he had opened the sixth seal, and lo, there was a great earthquake. We can look back on Ezekiel 38 and see that that's when it takes place. And the sun became black as sackcloth of hair, and the moon became as blood, and the stars of heaven fell. Even as a fig tree casts her untimely figs, as she is shaken with a mighty wind, and the heaven departed, the atmosphere, the sky departed as a scroll when it is rolled together, and every mountain and island were moved out of their places. And of course, the kings of the earth, and the great men, and the rich men, and the chief captains, and the mighty men, and all rich and poor, free men, yes, democracies, hid themselves in the dens and in the rocks of the mountains. And what are they saying? To the mountains and the rocks, fall on us and hide us from the face of him that sits on the throne, that is Jehovah, and from the wrath of the Lamb, for the great day of his wrath is come, and who shall be able to stand? Then we can go to what is it? 2 Peter 3. And of course, 2 Peter 3, the Catholic Church has rejected this, claiming that Peter did not write this. And the Protestant leader, Martin Luther himself, has declared the entire book of 2 Peter as in dispute. Verse 10. Make sure, because I don't want to miss anything here. Turn up. Let's go. I want to make sure that I got the right passage here. Yeah, it is verse 10. Okay. Oh, let me see. But it is the same thing here, folks. But the day of Jehovah will come as a thief in the night, in which the heavens will pass away with a great noise, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat, and also the earth and the works that are therein burnt up. Yes, seeing this, all these things shall be dissolved. What manner of persons ought you be in all holy conversation and godliness or piety, looking for and hastening of the coming day of Jehovah, wherein the heavens being on fire, the atmosphere will be on fire, will be dissolved, and the elements shall melt with fervent heat. Nevertheless, we, according to his promise, look for a new heaven and a new earth, wherein dwells righteousness. So this is essentially Isaiah 34. So now we need to read Isaiah 34 and see what happens. And all their hosts shall fall down, as is verse 4 of Isaiah 34, as a leaf falls from the vine and falling from the fig tree. For my sword shall be bathed in heaven, and behold, it shall come down on Edom, and upon the people of my curse to judgment. Now, as I have mentioned before, Edom is a representation of Esau, the brother of Israel, the brother of Jacob. And instead of blessings, he got the curse. Why? Because He rejected the birthright given to him. He sold it for a morsel of bread, for temporary fulfillment. This is exactly what the European Roman Christians have done. They were supposed to be brethren to the Jews, and they sold the birthright offered to them to enter into the kingdom of Israel with the Jews, and instead chose to be the enemy of the Jews, the inheritors of the kingdom, thereby making themselves the enemy of Jehovah, the Holy One of Israel. Upon the people of my curse to judgment. Now, verse 6, this is much like Ezekiel 38 or 39. The sword of Jehovah is filled with the blood and is made with fatness of the blood of lambs and goats, with the fat of the kidneys of rams. For Jehovah has a sacrifice in Basra and a great slaughter in the land of Edom. So, figuratively speaking, I mean, you look at Ezekiel 39 and you see this take place in the mountains of Israel against Israel's enemies. You see, here's the thing. The Edomites are going to join with the Northern Army, and they're going to have the same reward as the Northern Army. Because, verse 8, it is a day of Jehovah's vengeance and the year of recompenses for the controversy of Zion. Make no mistake about it. There is a set time, there is an appointed time for vengeance against the Gentiles for what they've done to Jerusalem. What they did to Jerusalem, beginning with 67 CE. And the streams thereof shall be turned into tar, and the dust into brimstone, and the land thereof shall be burning tar. It shall not be quenched day nor night. The smoke thereof shall go up forever and ever. From generation to generation it shall lie waste, and nobody will pass over it forever and ever. But wait a minute. We read that happening in Europe in the book of Revelation. As I pointed out, the Roman Christian Europeans have taken the mantle of Esau for themselves, which is why the Jews call the Europeans Edom. That's the reason, folks. If you want to know the reason why, that is the reason. Now look, we just read this in Samuel, in 2 Samuel, did we not? And he laid the lot for them. He cast the lot for them, and his hand divided them unto them line by line. What? Didn't we just read that? Where was it? Line by line. I should not have 2 Samuel. Second Samuel 8. Take a look at this. Now, Moabites, they were always in cahoots with the Edomites. Verse 2, and he smote Moab and measured them with a line. casting them down to the ground. With 2 lines measured, he put to death, and with 1 line to keep alive. Well, looky here. And verse 17 of Isaiah 34, and he cast a lot of them, and his hand had divided it unto them line by line. This is the same kind of deal that's going to happen in the future. The son of David is going to do to the enemies of Israel. As David, just like David did to the Moabites here, so will it be done to the enemies of Israel who take part in Esau's hatred of Israel, of Edom's hatred of Israel. Do you think, folks, that the democracies, the republics of this world are going to tolerate this dictator in Israel, this monarch, this absolute ruler, judge, jury, and executioner? Do you think they're going to tolerate him when he goes and reaches out and takes the land all the way to the Euphrates River, as his forefather David did? When he, see, a thought occurred to me concerning this Hezbollah situation. I talked to my dad about this, and I said the current Israeli government does not have the guts. I'm not knocking the Israeli government. It's just a fact. And it's the fault of Christian nations. The Christian nations know that Israel is supposed to get all their land back to the Euphrates River. They know that the scripture says that Tyre and Zidon, which is Lebanon, are going to have to be driven out. They know that the Gazans are going to have to, somebody's going to do it. Let's go to Joel 3. For behold, in the first verse, in those days and in that time. So notice this is saying it twice. So it's guaranteed that in the time frame, in the generation that he brings again, or he returns the captives of Judah and Jerusalem. Well, Jerusalem was returned to the Jews in 1967. Okay. It says, in that time, he will also gather all the nations, all the Goy, and bring them down to the valley of judgment. Jehovah judges. Now, is that at Jerusalem, or is it going to be in the valley of Jezreel, as it is written in both Revelation and Hosea? We shall see. And will judge them. That word is judge. This word is judge. The valley of Jehovah judges, he will judge them. My reading said it's going to be in the valley of Jezreel, next to the mountain of Megiddo. For my people and for my heritage Israel, whom they have scattered among the nations and parted my land. And the first order of business is going to be to deal with Tyre and Zidon. And who is that? That will be Lebanon. Now, all the Palestinians, okay, he's going to deal with them. What's he going to do with them? Do you think for 1 minute that the current Israeli government is going to do this? I don't believe it. They are afraid of what the world thinks of them. The only one who is not afraid is going to be Messiah, son of David. Now, I'm not claiming it's going to be Messiah, son of David, that's going to do this. I'm just saying that the Israeli government is not going to do it. They're not going to do it. I'm telling you, they're too afraid. Who are they afraid of? They're afraid of Donald Trump and Vladimir Putin and Europe. And you see, this is Jehovah himself directly speaking here. What have you to do with me, O Tyre and Zidon, and all the coasts of the Palestinians? Will you render unto me a recompense? And of course, his right hand is Son of David. So what he's essentially saying, what are you going to do? Are you going to render a recompense unto my right hand? If you recompense me swiftly and speedily, will I return your recompense upon your own head, because you have taken my silver and my gold and have carried into your temples my pleasant things. The children of Judah and the children of Jerusalem you sold unto the Greeks, that you may remove them far from their border. Look, I will raise them out of the place where you have sold them, and will return your recompense upon your own head. Well, that's partially fulfilled, but it's partially unfulfilled, folks. What part is unfulfilled? I will sell your sons and your daughters into the hand of the children of Judah, and they shall sell them to the Sabians in Africa, to a people afar off, for Jehovah has spoken it. I believe now, as of 2 days ago, I talked about this with my dad, told him what I thought of this, that I do not believe that the current Israeli government is able or willing to do this. Somebody else is going to have to do it. That somebody else, I believe, is going to be Messiah, Son of David. And this act of deporting all the Lebanese out of the land, and all of the Judea and Samaria, deporting all the Judea and Samaria, and deporting all of Gaza out, get out, and selling them as slaves into the hands of the Sabians. No, the current Israeli government will not do this. They won't. I'm telling you. Messiah, Son of David, is going to do this. He's going to do this. He's going to take over the reins of government in Israel. At the astonishment and the shock and the dismay of all the nations around the world, all of these democracies, all of these representative republics, all these constitutional monarchies around the world, and they will say, how dare you, you dictator! We must have new elections in Israel right now or else. Yes. You see, folks, what's happening here is these countries with the greatest amount of power, how do I put this? Democracy and a representative republic is the greatest. They won't recognize a king. They won't recognize Israel's Messiah. They will not recognize Israel's king, because they no longer believe in a kingdom at all. They're completely brainwashed into believing that has a government of the people, by the people, and this is just the United States of America, of the people, by the people, and for the people. Well, the government in Israel is going to be of the Son of David, by the Son of David, and for the people of Israel. I'm telling you, I believe Joel 3, verses 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, 8, 9, or 8. The reason why it's going to be a precursor to the big war is because Messiah, Son of David, is going to take over right in front of their faces, take the lands that belong to him, just like David did. all the way to the river Euphrates. Yes, folks, that is what I believe. So, beware. Beware the democracies around the world. These democracies have put forth all kinds of horrific evils, like genderism, intergenderism, things like that, which is nothing more than the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah, which is exactly what Peter and Paul talked about what was going to be going on in the last days, in the days of judgment. It is democracies, it is republics that are pushing the extreme sodomite agenda around the world. And they have to be dealt with, and it will be dealt with by an absolute dictator.